Good morning, Wellness Warriors. How are you today? Today is Wellness Wednesday, and I hope you're having a fabulous day already this morning. If you're just getting started, the day is before you. If you've already gotten started, kudos to you for getting moving early. If you are just stumbling on my page, my name is Donna. I am a mom, a nana, a girlfriend, a grad school student studying for my Master of Science in Clinical Mental Health Counseling. I am a runner, a jazzerciser, a line dancer, and I have my own online activewear business. I work part-time as a program director for the National Alliance on Mental Illness local chapter, which is NAMI Citrus. And I am a huge wellness advocate because I have spent my life battling and learning about depression and anxiety and working to overcome it. I believe it's not something that you can necessarily be cured from, but it is something that you can learn to manage and thrive through. And it was on my heart a couple years ago. Yeah, it's been a bit. And that's exciting. It was on my heart a couple years ago to start Wellness Wednesday because I totally believe in peer support. I believe in sharing what works for us and learning what works for others, so that we can determine if we want to try to apply those things. And I have learned so much in the process of doing Wellness Wednesday. You have given me fantastic tips, and I hope that you have also learned from me. So I hope you enjoyed last week's video on grounding. That was something new. I posted a photo during my grandson's football game. I did a little bit of grounding. That was really super brave for me because since I have lived, and I was born in Florida, but I grew up in northern Michigan. And since I have lived back in Florida, I have absolutely refused to walk around barefoot because of sand spurs and ants and whatnot. But I did do a little bit of grounding on Saturday at my grandson's football game. And then I did a little bit again yesterday. And I don't know that I can pinpoint for sure that I see benefits, but I can see where as part of my overall, I did my grounding yesterday during my meditation, and I can see where as part of an overall wellness routine, it's definitely beneficial. That meditation and relaxation time felt a little different to me yesterday. So stay tuned because more on that. If you tried it in the last week, like I challenged you to do, please let me know in the comments. Let me know if you noticed a difference, if you felt anything. If you decided to go for grounding equipment, then let me know if you did that too and what you think and how it's working. You may not have received it yet, but just keep me posted. Send me a message or drop a comment in last week's video or this week's video, and let me know if the grounding is doing any, or earthing, that's the other word for it, is doing anything for you. With that said, if you're here, let me know you're here. Facebook doesn't always show me all the things. So if I don't acknowledge you or answer a question, then it's not because it's not because I'm ignoring you. It's because I didn't see it, because sometimes I see things and sometimes I don't. Okay. So, like I said, I did make an effort to do the grounding. I hope you enjoyed that video. I will drop the link to that video in the comments so that you can find it easily if you didn't see it. However, Friday is Valentine's Day. And it seems like a great time to talk a little bit about feeling alone versus feeling lonely, and why we should find joy in our own company, maybe while we're grounding outside. I've talked before, actually the last couple of years, I've talked about self-love, and there's still some of that in today's discussion, but this is a little bit more of a unique angle. And I think this is going to apply to everyone. I believe it applies to everyone, whether you have a Valentine or not. So let's get started with a little bit of nerd fact, right? Good morning, Miss Stacy. Nice to see you. So Valentine's Day history. This is going to be quick and dirty because historians, researchers still can't really pinpoint per se what the exact history of Valentine's Day is. It is a common belief that this holiday was created by greeting card companies. However, recognition of Valentine's Day in some form or fashion actually predates mass production of greeting cards. So they didn't start it, but they sure commercialized it, and they sure make a ton of money on it every year. Can we agree on that? So possible origins are in a Roman fertility festival that would take place on February 15th I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to sit and research all the cross dates, when the calendar started, whose calendar, all that. This is just basic general history that's out there, besides the greeting card companies. So after the festival was banned by a pope, it then became associated with Saint Valentine. There were actually 3 different accounts of a Saint Valentine, so there could have been 3, who knows? But it was an attempt by the Pope to Christianize what was known at the time as a pagan celebration. So the Pope appointed February 14th as Saint Valentine's Day as a day to recognize Saint Valentine. And then in the Middle Ages, and I'm not sure, honestly, again, not a historian, so if you are a historian, feel free to enlighten me. Middle Ages could have been before or after this. In the Middle Ages, and this is my favorite little tidbit, is considered to be, February 14th was considered to be the beginning of mating season for birds. And if you're paying attention to the birds outside, I can see where that's entirely possible. That is completely believable to me. And then Geoffrey Chaucer, who, if you don't know, was a famous poet, did his poem, The Parliament of Fowls, which was in 1375, refers to Valentine's Day as a day for romance when every fowl comes to choose his mate, which echoes the belief that in the Middle Ages it was considered to be the beginning of the mating season for birds. I don't know about you, but I think that's pretty foul. Okay, that was a terrible, terrible joke, but it had to be done. So there's a little bit of nerd fact history for you on Valentine's Day. So we don't have to blame the greeting card companies for this holiday. For some people, it's fun to do that. But just a few other tidbits of possibilities of where this, like almost every other holiday, we have a lot of questions about how it really started. There's a lot of myths and a lot of truths, and everybody's out to debunk all of them. So there we go. That's our tidbits for today. So, you might say to me, I don't care about Valentine's Day because I'm alone. And I would ask you then, even when you haven't been alone, if you haven't been in a relationship, have you ever felt lonely in a crowd? Have you ever felt lonely in a relationship? And have you ever felt lonely in a group of people that you considered friends or family? Because being alone and feeling lonely are not the same thing. We have been trained to think, because of the way society treats Valentine's Day, we have been trained to think that we are less than if we don't celebrate this holiday or have someone to celebrate with it. Lord knows, good morning, Miss Patricia, that I have spent plenty of time sulking in my home, in my room, whatever, because all I was focused on Valentine's Day was the fact that everybody else was kind of splitting off into pairs and everybody was getting roses and Valentines and whatever. And I was not. So societal pressure is really at work here, and it starts early, y'all. It starts with the kids. Now, I am pleased that as far as I know in this modern day and age, if kids are still passing around Valentines, which I believe they are, and I believe my grandkids do that, they are required to bring Valentines for everybody. In my day growing up, that was not the case. In my day growing up, people had the option and they were encouraged to bring Valentines for everyone, but it wasn't required. And so a lot of times my little cute Valentine's box that I made, I've mentioned before, I was bullied. I struggled as a kid growing up. My little decorated Valentine's box or envelope or whatever we did in school, and this is elementary school we're talking about, frequently only had a small portion of the Valentines that other kids had. So this kind of societal, what's the word I'm looking for? This kind of societal appraisal of Valentine's Day and its connected meaning, that starts early. That pressure starts early. In middle school and high school, you could buy a rose from one of the auxiliary groups and have it sent to somebody in another class that you liked. And I would sit in my high school and middle school classes and watch girls get flowers delivered. Sometimes not even from those auxiliary groups, but from outside flower companies, from a boyfriend that didn't go to school there or somebody that just wanted to really show off. And this was always a source of great awkwardness and discomfort and disappointment for me. So I am pleased to see, and it kind of set the tone for what a lot of my relationship beliefs and things like that looked like. You know, I believed that if I was in a relationship and that person didn't make a big deal out of Valentine's Day, that something was wrong with me, that they didn't really love me. This is common stuff that we learn from the way that we are, from what we're taught when we're younger, and from the emphasis that society puts on things like Valentine's Day. So we don't have to give into this. But back to the lonely, even in a crowd, these are also examples of how I felt lonely, even in a crowd, as I watched other kids continue to open Valentines long after I opened my 3 or 4, as I watched other girls get roses from people that had crushes on them, boyfriends, whatever. And then as an adult in my relationships, it gave me unrealistic expectations. And it also taught me something else. And this is where I'm going to turn back around to the alone or lonely. It also taught me that I needed to have somebody to be validated, that I needed to be in a relationship with somebody and have a person that felt romantically toward me in order to be validated. And that had tremendous impact on a good chunk of my adult life. So being alone, being with yourself is an entirely different thing than being lonely. And a lot of times feeling lonely is a perception that we develop because we think we need to be validated by somebody or something else. We think we need to have these gifts or these flowers or these chocolates to be validated, or that we need to be in a relationship to be validated. I know that I spent a lot of time as a teenager and a young adult thinking that I was nothing if I didn't have someone who liked me, or who felt romantically toward me. So these kinds of societal pressures and kind of mental training, if you will, go a long way toward making us view something like Valentine's Day as something we need to feel lonely about, instead of embracing the opportunity to learn about ourselves and celebrate ourselves. So whether you're spending the day with someone or on your own, being alone doesn't have to feel lonely. In fact, you might find it quite empowering. And I know that once I started to embrace it, I did as well. In fact, the first Valentine's Day that I spent after ending a 10-year relationship, I saw a friend post, I was kind of, I don't have a Valentine's Day is coming. I'm just going to sit at home and wait for the discount chocolate. Well, I had a friend that posted on Facebook that she wanted to go see a concert. It was the Bare Naked Ladies. They were playing at Universal Studios on Valentine's Day. And I was just kind of entering the yes phase of my life. So when she posted that she wanted to go see them and did anybody want to be her Valentine's date, I said yes. And I figured the rest out later. Good morning, Miss Debbie. And I figured the rest out later. And I can tell you that up until that point in my life, and I was probably, I'm trying to remember, maybe 41, 42 at the time, I can't remember a better Valentine's Day. Do you know why? Because I was focused on spending time with a friend I didn't get to see very often, and I was focused on this concert and having a good time, and I was focused on all these other things besides that I wasn't breaking off into a pair with somebody. So I don't think it was the concert necessarily or the company, both of which were fantastic, that made that Valentine's Day so valuable, as much as that I learned that I could go do something on Valentine's Day and I could celebrate Valentine's Day in a way that didn't really have to do with flowers or chocolate, or necessarily even with a significant other, and still have a fabulous day. It was honestly, up until that point, the best Valentine's Day that I could remember in my entire life. Because I got to be honest with you, even when I was in relationships, and they gave me things for Valentine's Day, it was difficult. By that time, I was jaded by that whole greeting card company thing. And so it was difficult for me to appreciate it. Good morning, Super Kayla. It was difficult for me to appreciate it even then, because I just overthought the heck out of everything, right? And so again, that's part of that societal pressure that is placed on us, especially in terms of Valentine's Day. Good morning, Victoria. So being alone is a physical state. And I have spent many Valentine's days alone since then, where I really wasn't concerned about the day. I did things to celebrate myself. I treated myself to flowers. I cooked myself a steak on the grill. I chatted with some friends. I watched a movie that I loved. And that time, and that was that growth period that I spent time with a friend on Valentine's Day instead of worrying about whether or not I had a date, and things like that, taught me to associate things differently, if that makes sense. It taught me to appreciate time alone. And the more time I began to spend with myself, the more I learned about myself. And you know what else I learned? I learned that I don't necessarily always want to be around other people. And that's when I really also learned that I could feel lonely in a crowd of people if they weren't the right people for me. Then more often I felt lonely in that situation than I did in a situation where I was by myself, regardless of what day it was, right? So being alone is a physical state. Feeling lonely is an emotional state. And it's related to feeling disconnected or not belonging, which has been a lot of my younger adult and childhood, was not feeling like I belonged. Not because of my history in foster care, not feeling like I belonged in a family setting, not feeling like I belonged in a group of people that weren't like my very closest circle. And a lot of that was my emotional state, my very jaded perspective based on my beliefs. And unfortunately, we don't have to believe everything fortunately, we don't have to believe everything we think. And it took me a long time to learn that. So I find that very rarely do I ever feel disconnected where I'm at anymore. And that's because I seek groups of people. When I am out, I seek groups of people, and I seek time with individuals that I don't feel disconnected from, that I feel connected to, or I seek new connections. And that way I don't have that situation of feeling like I don't belong. And frankly, if I am in a situation where I just feel like I don't belong, I make an excuse and I leave. But none of that is any longer. And my boyfriend is wonderful. I have an amazing relationship. But none of that is associated. None of my beliefs in myself, my value, or how I value myself surrounding Valentine's Day has anything to do with that relationship. That relationship is more like the icing on the cake for me. Years ago when I was in a support group, I had somebody else in that support group say that they viewed her wellness, she viewed her wellness, and this was so profound to me at the time, and it still is, as the cake. It's all the ingredients to make the cake. And then you yourself are that whole cake, and a relationship is the frosting on the cake. And I think that's profound. And I love looking at Valentine's Day through that lens, knowing that I feel like the whole cake, and that if I get to spend Valentine's Day with a loved one, with my significant other, then that's just the icing on that cake. And it doesn't necessarily have to be on that day. Good morning, Miss Peggy, if I didn't say it already. So how do we be our own Valentines? How do we be our own Valentine? And this is where some of that self-love we talked about comes in. And this applies to anyone, regardless of whether they're in a relationship or not. Because sometimes things are going to happen. Somebody's going to have to go out of town. You're going to be by yourself. Solitude is not the enemy. It can actually be quite therapeutic. It can provide time for self-reflection, creativity, and recharging. I know for me personally, I need solitude periodically to recharge. I just have to watch myself, because sometimes if I get too much of that, then I don't want to leave that solitude. And that's part of that anxiety and that social anxiety that I've been trying to kick to the curb for years. So solitude is a time for reflection, creativity, recharging, where you can I don't know about you, but it does me a lot of good to just kind of be able to rattle around my house in my own space on my own time, not on a schedule. I don't get to do that very often, because a lot of my life is very scheduled in order for me to be able to accomplish grad school things and Wellness Wednesday things and activewear business things and NAMI things. So to be able to rattle around on your own schedule in your own time and just kind of do what you want, it's highly underrated. So again, solitude is a great opportunity to reconnect with yourself. One of my favorite stories to tell, and if you're a follower, you've heard this before, is when I talk about the movie The Runaway Bride. Now, I saw this years ago. It was with Julia Roberts, and was it Richard Gere? I don't remember. In any case, I saw the movie once. It was years ago, and there's only one thing that I remember about that movie, and that is that her name was, I have a notation. Her name was Maggie. And she was known for leaving men at the altar. That's why she was called the Runaway Bride. And one of the most important things, the thing that stuck out for me about this movie was that she did not know how she liked her eggs. She didn't know how she liked her eggs because her entire identity was always wrapped up in whatever relationship she was in. And in that moment of that movie, I wasn't a runaway bride. I'd only been married once. So there was very little with this movie that I felt that I could identify with. But in that moment, I was Maggie. When I realized that up until that point, a lot of my identity had been wrapped up in the relationships, the romantic relationships that I was in, when there was so much more to the cake than that, right? So this particular scene, this lady that did kind of a podcast article about it says, do you actually know how you like your eggs? And I've told this story before. Good morning, Danielle. Julia Roberts' character, Maggie, all her identity was wrapped up in these other men. And that's kind of why she had a lot to do with why she kept panicking and run away at the altar, because she wasn't being true to herself because she didn't know herself. So this friend walks into her kitchen after she's run away from the altar again, and she's got eggs everywhere, cooked eggs everywhere. They are hard-boiled. They are over easy. They are sunny side up. They are everywhere. And her friend is like, what are you doing? And she said, I'm trying to, or something. This is not verbatim because, again, it's been years. She was trying to figure out how she liked her eggs. Because when you talk to her ex-husbands, ex-fiancés, ex-jilted grooms, whatever, they all, when asked how she liked her eggs, they all repeated however they liked theirs. So she decided that the big turning point for her was learning how she liked her own eggs. So again, solitude is an opportunity to connect with yourself or reconnect with yourself if you've lost that. To learn how you like your eggs in a very proverbial fashion. What is it about yourself that is unique, that you like, that is a talent, that you don't like, that you want to change? And let that not be predicated on validation from a relationship that you're in on a specific day of the year. So how do we do that? We reframe. We just reframe it. And I make it sound easy. It's so not easy. So ignore that just part. We have to reframe it. It's not about being alone, and it's not even about the day. It's about how you spend the time, whether it's with yourself, with a close friend, with a family member, a loved one, or a significant other, partner, whatever you want to call that. It's about not focusing on what society tells us that day should be, which sets unrealistic expectations and takes away the joy that we should be able to find in spending that time with ourselves or a loved one or a significant other or whatever the case may be. Does that make sense? We're under a lot of societal pressure, especially with this day in particular. I would rank it right up there with Christmas. We're under a lot of societal pressure at Christmas to have piles of gifts under the tree, to have the Christmas cards out by a certain day, to have that picture perfect Hallmark Christmas in our homes, in our yards, the whole 9 yards. And it takes away from the joy that we're supposed to be experiencing in that day and in those moments. So how do we do this, How do we do this? We can date ourselves. If you aren't spending that day with a significant other or a loved one, or even if you are, take time to yourself. Date yourself. Go for a walk. Watch a great movie, whether it's in the theater. The first time I went to a theater to watch a movie by myself, I was like, I'm the only one that's in here alone. There was like 4 other people in the theater, and they were couples. I mean, come on, really, what was I comparing to? And the movie stunk, but I did it. And that first time was the hardest. After that, I was like, oh, I want to see this movie and nobody else does. Here we go. So watch a movie, whether it's in the theater or it's at home. Take yourself out to the coffee shop. Get yourself a latte, or a chai tea. Do an at-home spa day. Go to a concert with a friend. Buy yourself flowers. I'm not going to break into Miley Cyrus, but maybe I am. I can buy myself flowers. And you can do that any day of the week. Chocolate, cook your favorite meal, order takeout. Do things that make you feel good and bring you joy. Not because it's Valentine's Day, but because you deserve it. Or you and the person you're spending time with deserve it. Challenge the thought that joy, satisfaction, happiness with yourself has to have external validation. That's a big deal. That came up. I did a recent post about feeling my imposter syndrome creep up in terms of a paper, and I'm having it again right now because I have 2 papers due this week. And not some people I think misunderstood the post. And in that respect, yes, I was kind of looking for outside validation from my instructor. But the point is that the point of that post was that we all experience at some point that need for validation from an external source. But we don't need to have it on Valentine's Day just because the greeting card companies or society tells us that we do. And that's really what I'm trying to say here and kind of what I was trying to say then. So I would challenge you to reject the fact that joy has to have external validation, that love of yourself or of somebody else requires a card or chocolate or flowers to validate that, or that you even need a specific day to do it. And then visualize a positive relationship with yourself. How would you treat your best friend or partner? The Miley. That's awesome, Danielle. It's great that you are trying to give your daughter that perspective at such a young age, because I don't know if you were on from the beginning, but my experiences as a school age person kind of set the tone for staying in some not so great relationships because of what my beliefs were about how people showed they cared and about the fact that I needed to have a relationship to validate me. So the younger we can teach our kids this, the better, in my opinion. The most positive relationship you will ever have is with yourself, if you choose for it to be. How would you treat your best friend or partner? And you guys know I can get on my soapbox here. You should never talk to yourself in a way that you wouldn't speak to the person you love the most, your child, your partner, your best friend. A positive relationship with yourself makes you a better friend, partner, etc. And it also helps you to choose who you spend your time with from just a better angle and a better place. So I'm going to challenge you to try a self-love routine today or this week. Whatever that looks like, taking yourself out to eat. I actually had a lady one time when I took myself out to lunch. She kind of, when I was standing at those, she kind of walked up to the hostess stand and she's like, just you? One? And I was like, yep. Kind of like do you have a problem with that? And I chose, because I reframed, I chose to greet that as an opportunity to kind of show someone else that, yeah, you can go out to lunch by yourself, versus an opportunity to beat myself up for being there by myself and let myself be validated or invalidated by whatever this server hostess thought of me because I was there by myself. So I'm going to challenge you to try a self-love routine. It doesn't have to be today. Today's great. Sometime this week, celebrate yourself. Be your own Valentine. Go for a walk. Give yourself a little mini spa treatment. Watch your favorite movie. Buy yourself flowers, chocolates. Do a Miley Cyrus. Whatever the case may be. And then tell us in the comments or shoot me a message. How are you doing that? How are you celebrating yourself this week? And then I would encourage you to remember these things. There is true power in being alone with yourself if you are willing to go into it with an open mind and embrace that time to yourself. Learn about you, learn about what you like, stay, kind of If you have thoughts, I'm here by myself, I'm so lonely, just kind of dismiss those and redirect your focus on something you could be working on, something you could be doing, participating in that brings you joy. Whether you are in a relationship or not, you are your first and longest relationship. So love the one you're with. That's a song. You guys know I'm going to incorporate music in here where I can. Love the one you're with, which is always you. You are always with you, whether you're with somebody else or not. So love the one you're with, which is you. I'm sure that's not necessarily what that song meant, but we won't even go there because that's totally the wrong message for today. And P.S., you can do this regularly, not just on Valentine's Day. In fact, I encourage you to do it at least once a week, maybe every day. Just like you would not wait till a specified day to tell your child that you love them, to tell your significant other that you love them, to tell your parents, your close friends. You wouldn't wait till a specific day to tell them you love them. Don't wait until Valentine's Day to celebrate yourself. And to celebrate yourself or to show your love to anyone else. And whether you are celebrating this week with yourself or with someone else or with the birds, I'm telling you, I really like that idea. Then I just hope that you make Friday, Valentine's Day, whatever you want to call it, and every other day this week as awesome as possible by celebrating you and celebrating your love for the people around you. That's all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, if you found it helpful and you think it will help somebody else, please share. My hope is always that my message will, if it touches one person in any way, then it's worth the time. So again, I hope you found it helpful. If you did, please share. If you have somebody specific that needs to hear this message and you don't want to call them out, you can share to their messenger. Or copy a link and send it to them by text, and no one else will ever know except them, right? So that's a little tidbit for you. If you have a topic you'd like to see me cover in the future, don't hesitate to shoot me a message, and I'll see if I can work it in. Of course, we try to stay away from politics and negativity, and I'm not sure yet what we're talking about next week. Wellness Wednesday may be at a weird time next week. More on that later. I may have to... it may be at a weird time. I'm not going to get into that right now, but I'm sure that an important topic for somebody to hear will come up. I have a few that I'm toying with. And in the meantime, happy Valentine's Day, happy Friday, happy week, and happy February. And between now and the next time we see each other, be well. And make sure you let me know how you're celebrating yourself this week, or today, or whatever that looks like. Okay, I love you. Have a fabulous day. Bye.